Hi, and welcome to Dime's Block of the Month. I'm PJ Wong, and I'm going to guide you through this month's block, and I'm calling this one Storm Geese. This is block number 8 in our series. So we've got kind of traditional flying geese going here, and then we've got a bigger one to the side, and just some very simple offset quiltings in here, a couple rows. This is a very fun and pretty quick block to do. So this is a picture of the block. This is the actual block that's been stitched out. And then this is just a sample layout. So this is a 6 block layout. 3 across the bottom, 3 across the top. I think this would be actually a very, very fun border block. So, all right. We're going to set up the piecing in my block piecer as normal, and then add the offset quilting in my Quilt Embellisher. So let's go ahead and open up my block piecer. When you open your software, generally you're going to come up with the My Inspiration Today page, and don't forget to download your free designs. So I'm just going to shut this, and we're going to be creating our own artwork today. So the first thing that I want to do here is turn on my grid, and I'm going to check my grid settings. So we've got this at 1/2 inch, and that's perfect, and I have my snap to grid on, which is exactly what I want. So to make this easier to figure out, because I really don't like to have to think too hard if I don't absolutely have to, I'm going to start with a 9-inch block, and you'll see why I'm doing that here in just a second. So I'm going to set this actually to outline, and then I'm going to say apply to this, and I'm going to go over here to my size. I'm going to take off my maintain aspect ratio, and I am going to put this at a 9 by 9 inch block. All right, so generally when I work on things, I always center it. I always right click and do my center origin. In this particular instance, I'm not going to do that because I want it to be set at the corner here. And actually I can set my, if this will be a little more clear if I actually set my grid settings to 1. All right, and then I'm still going to move this up here to the corner. All right, so, and we are not centered, and it, for right now, it doesn't matter because we're going to resize this back down to a 7-inch block because I know that that will fit into my 8-inch hoop. But just to set up the artwork, this is going to be much easier if we start this way. So I want each of my storm geese, I want them to be basically 3 increments tall, so which is why I set this up as a 9-inch block. And then we're going to have 3 increments here as well. And actually maybe we'll do 4. All right, we'll play with that here in just a minute. So the first thing that I'm going to do is set up my first triangle. So I'm going to use my triangle function here, and I know that my triangle is going to be 3 increments tall. And let's do, if we do 6 increments wide, then we'll have a 3-inch triangle over here, so that will work. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the top left and drag this to the bottom right. Okay, so there's my first one. So now what I can do is I can simply take this and just copy it for the next ones. So copy paste and drag that into place, and then I don't even need to copy, I can just paste because it's still on my clipboard, and then I can move this guy up into position. Okay, so there's the first section of my flying geese. So now to get my little corner guy in here, I'm going to change color by just right clicking on one of my little color chips down here. And for this, I'm going to use my little sideways triangle trick, and I'm just going to drag in here a square. I'm going to go ahead and select that and get into my shape tool. I'm just going to right click on my corner node and tell it to delete the point. So now I've got my triangle, and it's easier than trying to build one upright and turn it to get it to fit. So I can simply take these guys, or this one guy, and I can say copy paste, and I can just mirror that, and here's the other part of my flying geese. I can now select both of those at the same time, and I find that easy to do over here in my sequence bar. You could also select one and hold down the control key and select the other. I'm going to copy and paste those, and then drag those into position, and then just paste again and drag that up into position. Okay, so now I've got my upright geese. Now I need to do my sideways goose, I guess. So I'm just going to drag around this top section and select it, and I'm going to say copy and paste, and then I'm going to rotate this till it's sideways, and then I'm just going to drag this into position here, and then I'm just going to drag this down and let that reshape all on its own. So basically there is all of our artworks all set up. So the only thing that I don't need here is that very initial rectangle that I used for my sizing. So I've just selected that from the top and hit my delete key, and now that's gone. So now the only thing that's here is actual artwork. So before I forget, I am going to size this now to the size I actually want. So I just did a drag select to select everything. I'm going to go up here to my transform and turn on my maintain aspect ratio and tell this I want it to be 7 inches. Okay, and now I can center this. Right click and then center origin. So now everything is centered. Okay, so now I'm going to preview my fabric. So I am going to select one of these guys, and I'm going to come over here to my fabrics. I'm going to click on my dots and select my 2018 beach sewing. And for my center geese, I was using the blue and the gray dots, so I can just say okay to that. And again, you can preview here if you want. Say you don't like the blue and the gray dots, you can choose a different fabric. Say I want to go with the overall dress print. That's probably too big. So again, you can just play. So you could also select all of these at the same time. You can either select the first one and hold down the control key, or in this particular instance, these are all together over here in my sequence bar, so I can just select that, and now I can color everything at the same time. It'll just save you some clicks. So we've got our artwork here on this side. And actually all of our orange artwork over here, that's all together as well. So I can select that from the sequence, go to my fabric icon, select my dots, oops, there we go, beach sewing, and this one I used my orange scissors. Here's my orange scissors, and then I just have these two. So selecting this one, selecting my fabrics, and this one was the gray and yellow dots. And again, anything that's in your library you could choose off of here. Here's my yellow and gray dots, and then my triangles here, I think these were purple. I'm using, for this one I actually use complementary colors. If you don't like to have to figure out colors for things, just kind of using the color wheel is a fun little trick. So there's my orange. So basically yellow and purple are complementary and blue and orange are. So I just used those. All right, so there are all of our colors in place and all of our blocks. So I'm just going to select all of this, and I'm going to go up here to my auto build, and I'm going to change this. Last time I had this on legal paper, I'm going to change that back to letter, and then 0.375 for my seam allowance, and I'm going to say auto build. And it's probably going to tell me that it cannot do this in one hooping. And if you look at this and I sort my numbers, it doesn't change here. But when I go into my preview, it's basically saying it's going to do this patch and this patch and this patch as 3 separate things. And then you're going to end up adding the next thing to it. In reality, I know that we can actually do this all in one hooping instead of having to do multiple hooping. So let's close out of here, and what we're going to do is we're going to reorder this. So I'm going to go up here to my reorder, And I'm going to start here and go this way. Okay, so I'm actually going to start down here. So this is going to be my number 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, 11, and 12. So that should all be able to stitch in one block. So I'm just going to go back up here again. Now that I've reordered, I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go to my workflow tool, give it my 3/8 seam allowance, and I'm just going to say auto build. It's going to think. And when I preview this, it's done exactly the same thing. All right, so basically what we have to do, we don't want to save that. We are going to go, we're going to close this and go back in. Up here, we need to reset all of this. So in order for this to work correctly, what we have to do is we have to get all of this set up into one group. So I just did a right click on my unit when they were all divided, and I said reset. I'm going to change this once again to my 375. I'm going to select my very top number, and I'm going to hold down my control key and select the second, and then right click and say group. And then I'm still holding down my control key. I'm just going to right click and say group. And I'm going to do this for every single item on this list. And you can see how they're changing over here on this side. It's because we're adding them to that first group. And you don't have to add the last one because it's the only thing that is left. Okay, so now all we need to do is tell this to preview, and we don't need to sort our numbers because they're in the order that we actually put them. So when we say preview to this, you can see everything is all in one now, which is exactly what we're wanting. Okay, so I can save this, and I'm going to save this to my C Dime Designs, and then I have a 2018 folder here. Give this the name, it will automatically create the folder. So 08 Storm Geese, and then 375. Okay, so this is automatically going to create the folder. Sorry about that. All right, and then I'm going to say save to that, and now I can close this. And when you save that, basically what it gives you, so here is your stitching file with all your seams and all your tack downs and all your guides, and then the artwork that we're going to need for the next section. Come on, artwork. There's the artwork. And then the PDF sheet that shows you a picture of your block with all of your numbers on it. Again, a picture of the stitching file, and then all of the step-by-step stitching directions. So all your placements, and then your right side face up tack stitch, and then your seams and your tack down and seam and tack down, and so on and so forth. Okay, so then what I'm going to want to do is set up for cutting. So for this, I'm just doing the one block, and I'm just want this to go to paper. So as long as you've got this on paper, it's automatically going to send out a PDF. So once again, I'm going to change to 375 for my seam allowance, 0.375 3/8 of an inch. And then I'm just going to save this. And once again, it will show you all of your parts. So there's all of the different parts in the different colors. So I'm just going to say save, and I'm going to put it underneath the file that I just made, and I'm just going to call this cut. I'll call it cut geese, and then save. And then what happens is, so here is this same folder that we had just created before, and underneath that is now this extra folder. And here's all of your pieces. And again, that will just print out a PDF. And then the preview. So this gives you, once again, the picture of your block. And then this is going to show you, this is each of the fabrics that you need and then the size that you need to make those. Okay, so that's everything for my block piecer. So we're going to switch on over to my quilt embellisher now. Okay, so I've opened up my quilt embellisher and you'll see the My Inspiration Today page. Don't forget to download your free designs. I'm just going to close that down for now. And I'm going to go over here into my designs and I'm going to pick up my storm geese. So here's my storm geese. And I'm just going to left press and drag that artwork over into the work area. So here's all of my artwork. So we're going to use a fun little utility in here that is the create offset. So it's conceivable that when you bring your artwork in, it will all be grouped together, and generally it is. So basically what you would need to do is just tell it to ungroup, the little icon here. I had this in here once before, so mine was already ungrouped, but you'll want to ungroup that because you want to be able to get to the individual sections of your artwork. Okay, so we're going to start up here in the corner. And I've just selected just this left corner and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say utility create outlines. So I want my outline to go to the inside and I do not want this second box checked. And I want this to be at 0.25, actually maybe 0.375. And sometimes you honestly just have to play with that to see what the best offset is actually going to be. And for these outsides, I really just want one offset. So my repeat is just one here. And I don't want to remove the selection. I want to leave my artwork in there. We can always turn it off from the sequence bar over here if we don't want to have to see it. So I'm just going to say okay to that. So now you can see here I've got a piece of artwork, and if I switch and I turn, I have to figure out which one it is. There we go. So you can see here, there's my piece of artwork. All I have to do for that to become stitches is just come up here to my run, tell it to convert to run, and then I can tell it what kind of stitch I want over here. So I want this to be a bean stitch, and I want it to be just a 3-ply bean stitch. And the stitch length, I'm going to go for a little longer stitch length, and I'm going to give it a 4.0, and then say apply to that. So now if I turn on my realistic view, there's my stitches. So if I turn back on my artwork, basically I think that I can select all of these corner pieces of artwork and right click and say utility create outlines, want to the inside and 0.375, and that should create all of those at the same time. Yep, can you see there? And then again I'm just going to convert those to run and tell it to be a bean stitch and change that to a 4.0 stitch length. So see how easy that is? I could have actually done all of those all at the same time. So now the reason I didn't do the middle ones is I actually want more repeats there. And I might be able to get more repeats on this as well. Nope, because this is only 3 tall, it's the same. So these, I could have selected all of these at the same time as well and done all of those sides together because they're all going to be exactly the same. So 0.375 to the inside, and that one not checked. There we go. Convert 4 and a bean stitch and apply to that. Okay. So now for my inside, these triangles are slightly larger. So I think, and again, sometimes you just have to play, I think that I'll be able to get 2 repeats in here. So 0.375 and once again to the inside. And I'm going to say okay to that. Yep, that worked perfectly. And it's pretty equally spaced. Okay. So now I want to show you something that if you don't do, you may not like what you end up with. So all these guys, I'm just going to turn that off for the time being. Whoops, did I want to turn that off? No, I don't want to turn that one off. Oh, because here's my run stitch. I'm going to turn this a different color so it'll be a little easier to see, and it will also split it out from this because these are all the same color right now, which we may not want those to be, and actually it's going to be these last two pieces that we're going to want to be different colors. So I'm just going to turn those a different color right now, and it will split them up over here on our sequence bar, which will make things a little easier to keep track of. Okay, so, oh, and in fact, here, these are all still the same color because they're all still artwork, but this is the part that I want to show you. So I'm going to turn off the rest of this artwork just so that it makes it a little easier to see what's happening here. And I'm going to change these a darker color so that you can actually see them. Okay, so here are our pieces of artwork. Okay, and because they were all created at the same time, they are basically all grouped together. When we created this and we turned that into stitching, we simply just selected the stitching and told it what stitch length we wanted, and away we went. So bean and a 4. But what can tend to happen sometimes is that because all of that artwork was combined at one, it was created all together, so it was combined. When you go to stitch that, some funny things can happen. And if we run through this, and here, so here's our regular side pieces, and they're doing exactly what we would expect them to do. So now we get into the ones that we just created when there were multiples. Can you see how they're kind of jumping all over the place and it isn't actually finishing off around the way you would expect it to? You're going to end up with a ton of tie-ons and tie-offs. So that is not what we're looking to do. Okay, so I'm just going to close out of this and I'm going to undo that and I'm going to undo this. So we're back to this. These are still all grouped together. So the first thing that I'm going to do is oh, well, they're not actually grouped together, but they are, because they were created together, they are in one group, even though you can't ungroup them here. But what I really want to do is use this, the break apart. So now these are all separate pieces of artwork, as opposed to before it was only one piece of artwork. So this is what we want. So now if we select all of this together, even though we're selecting, it looks like we're selecting the same thing, but these are now all different pieces of artwork. Now if we turn these into our run stitches and tell this to be a bean stitch at 4, when we actually run this in the simulate, when this runs, you'll see that they all run in a full triangle. Now, it's still kind of jumping around, so we're probably going to want to reorder some of that. So I'm going to go into here, and now we just have to identify what's what. So it's starting at the top and going to the bottom here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two and I'm going to turn those a different color. So now there's just less things for us to worry about here. I'm going to drag these together, maybe. There we are. So now those two are together. So now we just have the ones that are on this side. So one really easy way to do this is if you just select these, and if you turn each set of these a color all of their own, it's easier to pick them out of the list over here. And then once they've been sorted, you can figure out where they need to go. All right, so let's see here, over here on our list. So here's our yellow and here's our yellow. So we can drag those two together. So our yellows together, and here's our reds. And we've got this blue, and where is, I am missing my other blue. Oh, he's up here. All right, so I'm going to pull those two together. Okay, so when we run this, if we want this to run so that the blue is going to run first, and generally I like to stitch from the inside to the outside. So in reality, I want that one to run first. So that's going to run, and then this. And then I want my yellows to run, and once again I want to go from the inside to the outside, and those already are. So I'm just going to drag this underneath. So this is kind of a really good lesson on reordering things. And that's on the top and then next. So, and then we want this to run after our yellow. So I'm just dragging it to below the yellow. And then we'll want our orange to run. And we actually want the inside to run first and then the outside. So there's our inside and here's our outside, and it's running after, I think we have two different reds here. These are our sideways reds. So that's perfect. Okay, so now that we have everything in the order that we want it to run, and what do we have? Oh, those are our run stitches up here. We've got other, oh, sorry. We have other run stitches. We've got these corner stitches, which I'm going to right click on those and tell those to break apart as well. So these two guys, these actually, if we turn our, whoops, if we turn our, sorry, I can't think and talk at the same time today. If we turn all of our images back on, how did I just lose some of my images? Okay, so I've got all of my artwork back on. So my corner guys right here, these I probably want all to be the same color, and I probably want them to be a different color than my center set here. So because I've got two of these that are the same color, it's kind of hard to keep them apart over here. So I'm actually going to change all of these to, let's go, we don't have anything in here that's green yet. So I'm just going to change all of these green. Whoops. Okay, so these are all green, and then what's running up here at the top, so in reality I want those to run blue, which is exactly what they are, and then I want the ones on the inside, I really want those to be orange. So the ones that I just turned green, I guess I could have just turned orange, so I'm just going to right click and turn those. All right. So now over here to the side. So our orange, we really want these orange that are here on the side to be purple. And then our red, we really want to be yellow. And once again, I'm just kind of doing the complementary colors because it's kind of easy that way. All right, so there is all of our stitching set up. And we could turn off all of our artwork so that we can just see the stitching, and I'm just collapsing all of this. If you just right click under the all items and say collapse all, it's the easiest way to do that. So starting from here, this should be all of our stitching. So just so that we get a better idea of what our stitching is looking like, there's all of our stitching. So if we were to run this, you'll be able to see, and I'm just going to drag this up. We need to fix those corners because they're running kind of funky. Okay, so let's go back in here, and I think actually what's happened here is these were still connected when we converted them. So I'm going to select those and can tell them, oh, I know, it's this set that was all connected and I didn't disconnect them. So I want those to be broken apart. So now if we run this, I think it should actually run fine. This is a good lesson in why you want to use your slow redraw tool instead of actually getting to your machine to find out you did something wrong. There we go. So now they're all running the way that they should be running. Okay, So that's all set up. So now the last thing that I need to do in here is I need to add my basting border. So I'm going to turn on all of my borders again, or sorry, all my artwork, so that I can add my basting border in. And I'm just using my rectangle tool, and it's in outline, and I want this to be a color that is not in either my stitch file or my embellishment file. And in this case I'm going to use green because I already used the yellow here. So I'm going to just right click on that, and my snap to grid is on, so I'm just going to left press and drag a rectangle in there. And then I'm going to move this to be the first thing that stitches on my embellishment file. So right above here, which those were stitching first. Now this is stitching first, and I want this to be a run line, and this should be 5 millimeters because it is a basting border. Okay. So now all our embellishment file is all set up. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm just going to call this save as, and I'm going to go back up here to my storm geese. I'm going to select this file so that I don't have to manually type all of this, and I'm just going to change the back part of this and call this EMB for embellishment and save that. Okay. So now I'm going to combine the two files together so that I know everything will stitch all in one file. So I'm going to open up, this is my stitching file. So there's my stitching file. And then I'm going to go back to my embellishment file, and I'm going to select everything from my basting border down. And I'm just going to copy this and add this in here. So this first group, this is all of your block piecing file. And then we're going to get down to here, and these are all of our embellishments. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this file. And I'm once again going to save it back to the same folder where I've got everything else. And this one I'm just going to call all because it's all the files together. And I'm going to say save. And then at that point you would save that out to your machine embroidery format, and away you go. All right. So that's all of the embellishments. Let's take one final look at the block. So here's the picture of the stitched block. And then here's a 6-block layout. Okay, that's it for the storm geese. We'll see you next month. Thanks.